while the world's attention remains largely focused on the military standoff in the Strait of Hormuz and the escalating tensions in the South China Sea. A third and equally consequential front in the global strategic competition is quietly intensifying in the cold, gray waters of the Baltic Sea and along the land borders of Northern Europe. And the warnings coming from both sides are growing harder to dismiss. Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Shoigu has gone public with Moscow's deepening concern about NATO military activities in the Baltic region, activities that Russia characterizes not as defensive exercises, but as deliberate provocations designed to encircle Russian territory and threaten its national security. According to Russian state media, Shoigu stated that exercises being conducted under the auspices of the Joint Expeditionary Force, a multinational peacekeeping and rapid response coalition comprising 10 northern European nations, include simulations of naval blockades and evacuation scenarios involving Russia's Leningrad region. The Joint Expeditionary Force, established in 2015, was created specifically to respond quickly to crises in the Baltic and North Sea regions. Its members include the United Kingdom, Denmark, Finland, Estonia, Iceland, Latvia, Lithuania, Norway, Sweden, and the Netherlands. A coalition whose collective geography forms an almost complete encirclement of Russia's northwestern military perimeter. Shoigu went further, alleging that NATO's Operation Baltic, which commenced in January 2025, is not simply a freedom of navigation exercise but a deliberate attempt to control international shipping routes in the Baltic Sea and restrict the flow of goods in ways that directly harm Russian economic and strategic interests. He accused NATO of seeking to create the conditions for a direct military confrontation in the heart of Europe. Western officials and NATO diplomats have flatly rejected these characterizations, noting that Russia has made similar allegations in the past and that the exercises are entirely consistent with international law and long-established alliance practice. They have also pointed out the profound irony of Moscow raising concerns about military exercises while simultaneously maintaining one of the most heavily militarized border regions in Europe. The exercises that have drawn Moscow's sharpest criticism are part of BALTOPS, the Baltic Operations Exercise Series that has been conducted annually since 1972 and represents one of NATO's most enduring and established maritime training programs. This year's BALTOPS exercises are scheduled to run from June 4th through June 19th and will involve ground operations, anti-submarine warfare, naval surface operations, and integrated air defense exercises. Last year's iteration involved approximately 9,000 military personnel from 16 countries and more than 65 major pieces of military equipment, figures that represent a substantial and growing commitment of Allied resources to the Baltic theater. For Russia, the timing and scale of BALTOPS 2025 is particularly sensitive. The exercises unfold against a backdrop of heightened military activity on both sides of the Baltic Divide, with Russia conducting its own large-scale maneuvers in the region simultaneously, even as Moscow publicly condemns NATO's presence in the same waters. The contradiction is not lost on Western defense analysts, who note that Russia has maintained and expanded its own military infrastructure in the Baltic region for decades, including the heavily fortified exclave of Kaliningrad, a Russian military outpost wedged between Poland and Lithuania that is considered by NATO planners to be one of the most dangerous potential flashpoints in Europe. Kaliningrad deserves particular attention because in any serious analysis of the risk of conflict between NATO and Russia in Europe, it occupies a central and deeply troubling position. Russia acquired the territory from the Soviet Union after seizing it from Germany following the Second World War. Today, it serves as a heavily armed Russian military enclave on NATO's eastern flank, home to advanced surface-to-air missile systems, nuclear-capable ballistic missiles, and significant conventional military forces that can threaten targets across the entire Baltic region. The missile systems based in Kaliningrad include ballistic missiles capable of carrying nuclear warheads, weapons that travel at speeds of 6 to 7 times the speed of sound, measure over 7 meters in length, weigh nearly 4,000 kilograms, and carry warheads of approximately 480 kilograms. The nuclear arsenal housed in Kaliningrad gives Russia the ability to hold virtually every major population center and military installation in northern Europe, a strategic reality that shapes every decision NATO makes in the region. Russia also conducts regular large-scale military exercises in and around Kaliningrad, known as Zupad exercises, that rehearse offensive operations against NATO members. The Russian Defense Ministry has described Kaliningrad's military capabilities in terms that leave little ambiguity about their purpose. Surface-to-air missiles, anti-ship systems, air defense networks, and land-based strike capabilities that combine to make the enclave one of the most formidable concentrations of military power in Europe. For Western military planners, the single most alarming geographic feature in the Baltic theater is not Kaliningrad itself. It is what lies adjacent to it. The Suwałki Gap is a narrow land corridor approximately 40 kilometers wide that runs along the border between Lithuania and Poland, the only land connection between the three Baltic states of Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, and the rest of NATO territory. On one side of this corridor lies Kaliningrad. On the other lies Belarus, Russia's closest military ally, and a country through whose territory Russian forces have already operated in support of the war in Ukraine. Former U.S. Army Chief of Staff in Europe, General Ben Hodges, has described the Suwałki Gap in stark terms in his assessment. Lithuania and Poland are the first and most critical points of vulnerability in any Russian military action against NATO. An attack on NATO, he argued, would most likely begin with Russian and Belarusian forces moving quickly through the Suwałki Gap, cutting the land connection to the Baltic states and isolating Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania from the rest of the alliance before NATO forces could respond effectively. The gap is 40 kilometers wide. In modern warfare, 40 kilometers can be crossed in hours. The implications of a successful Russian push through the Suwałki Gap would be catastrophic, not just militarily, but politically, stripping 3 NATO member states of their land connection to Allied support and confronting the alliance with the most severe test of Article 5, the collective defense commitment, in its history. Against this backdrop of Russian military posturing and strategic threats, NATO has been quietly but significantly expanding its own offensive capabilities in the region, and the alliance's senior commanders are no longer staying quiet about it. Speaking at the Euro conference in Wiesbaden, Germany, General Chris Verdano delivered a statement that represented a notable departure from NATO's traditionally cautious public communications. He stated directly that NATO ground forces have developed the ability to strike and capture key Russian targets, including targets in Kaliningrad and other Russian-held territory, faster and more effectively than at any previous point in the alliance's history. "We can take them off the ground in an unprecedented manner," he said. "We have never been able to do that before." The statement was carefully calibrated, a signal to Moscow that NATO's deterrence posture is no longer purely defensive in character. The alliance is developing and demonstrating the capability to go on offense if necessary, and it wants Russia to know that. Western intelligence assessments have reinforced the urgency behind this capability development. Multiple assessments shared among NATO members have warned that Russia could attempt a military attack on one or more NATO member states within a window of 5 to 7 years, potentially using the pretext of protecting Russian-speaking minority populations in the Baltic states as justification for intervention. This is, of course, the same pretext Russia employed before its intervention in eastern Ukraine in 2014 and its full-scale invasion in 2022. Sweden, which formally joined NATO in 2024, after decades of military non-alignment, has rapidly become one of the alliance's most analytically clear-eyed voices on the Russian threat in the Baltic. Sweden's defense chief has issued a specific and sobering warning. Russia may attempt to seize a Baltic Sea island as a deliberate test of NATO's resolve and response capability. The scenario, which Swedish military planners have begun formally preparing for, envisions a Russian military action that is limited enough in scope to create ambiguity about whether it constitutes an Article 5 trigger, but significant enough, in strategic terms, to fundamentally alter the balance of power. In the Baltic, if NATO fails to respond decisively, Sweden's defense minister elaborated further, noting that Moscow does not necessarily need to be overtly aggressive to achieve this objective. A carefully calibrated seizure of a small, lightly defended island, executed quickly and presented as a fait accompli, could force NATO into an impossible choice: accept the loss and undermine the credibility of collective defense, or escalate in a way that risks a broader conflict with a nuclear-armed adversary. The Swedish commander's use of the phrase, "a point of waiting to see what might happen," in describing Russia's potential strategic calculus, is one of the more chilling assessments to emerge from any NATO member state in recent years. It suggests that Moscow may be probing not for territory alone, but for information, testing how quickly NATO can respond, how unified its decision-making is, and how far the alliance is willing to go when confronted with a challenge that falls below the threshold of an unambiguous invasion. The threat from Russia is not purely hypothetical. It is manifesting in real and increasingly frequent incidents along NATO's eastern border. Estonia recently reported that a Ukrainian drone flew over the chimney of a power plant on Estonian territory, an incident that, while not directly attributable to Russian action, highlighted the complex and dangerous airspace environment in the region. More alarming are the direct Russian airspace violations that NATO members have documented with growing frequency in recent years. Latvia reported a violation in 2023. In September 2025, 3 Russian MiG-31 fighter jets flew over the territory of a NATO member state, an incident serious enough to prompt a rare emergency session of the United Nations Security Council. Russia has responded to these incidents not with apology or de-escalation, but with threats. Shoigu warned explicitly on April 9th that any country permitting enemy drones to transit its territory faces serious consequences. If a country is providing territory for enemy drones to fly, he stated, they must clearly explain this, because they know what the consequences are. The warning was understood by every NATO member state in the region for exactly what it was: a threat of military retaliation against sovereign allied territory. It is the kind of statement that, in a previous era of European security, would have been almost unthinkable coming from a major power. Today, it is delivered as a matter of routine. Beyond the Baltic, Russian security officials have been expressing growing alarm about a second potential flashpoint: the Black Sea, where NATO naval forces and the Russian Black Sea Fleet have been operating in increasingly close proximity. Russian military planners are reportedly developing contingency scenarios for land attacks on NATO's eastern flank that would be launched from Russia's southern military district, a planning framework that envisions military operations not just in the Baltic, but across a much broader geographic arc stretching from the Black Sea to the Barents Sea. Western defense analysts assess that if and when the war in Ukraine eventually concludes, Russia may use the cessation of hostilities as an opportunity to regroup and redeploy its forces, positioning them for potential future action against NATO territory in the Baltic or Black Sea regions. The end of the Ukraine war, in this analysis, is not necessarily a moment of reduced risk for NATO. It may be the opposite. What is unfolding across the Baltic and Northern European theater is not simply a series of military exercises and diplomatic exchanges. It is the crystallization of a security competition that has been building for years and that is now reaching a level of intensity that Europe has not experienced since the Cold War. On one side, Russia, a nuclear-armed power with a demonstrated willingness to use military force to redraw borders, occupying a heavily militarized exclave in the heart of NATO territory, conducting exercises that rehearse offensive operations against alliance members, and making explicit threats against countries that support its adversaries. On the other side, NATO, an alliance of 32 nations that has added Sweden and Finland to its ranks in direct response to Russian aggression, expanding its eastern military presence substantially, developing unprecedented offensive strike capabilities, and warning Moscow, publicly and repeatedly, that the alliance's collective defense commitment is real, credible, and will be enforced. Between these two forces sits the Suwałki Gap, 40 kilometers of land that could, in the worst-case scenario, become the most dangerous piece of ground on the planet. The exercises will continue. The warnings will continue. And the question that haunts every security capital from Washington to Warsaw to Helsinki will also continue. Is Russia preparing for a war it intends to fight? Or conducting a campaign of strategic pressure it believes NATO will eventually back away from? The answer to that question and how the West responds to it may well determine the security of Europe for the next generation.